Welcome to the Bear Hug Experience, where we cozy up to the fire in our digital den and immerse ourselves in the inspiration born from exploring the hidden narratives and inevitable plot twists that shape every compelling startup journey. Join us as we showcase inspirational guests from bold investors with the Midas touch to pioneering entrepreneurs at the helm of today's most thrilling startups. We'll also hear from courageous go-to-market leaders navigating the frontier of emerging tech and the unsung heroes bringing all the people and parts together to form unstoppable dream teams. Here's your host, Kraig Ward, founder and managing director of Bear Hug Recruiting. Get ready for an insightful journey.
The following is a conversation with Rohit Gupta, co-founder and CEO of Auditoria.AI, the leading cognitive automation provider for ERP and corporate finance teams, backed by top investors such as Venrock, Neotribe Ventures, Engineering Capital, KPMG, and Workday Ventures. Rohit is a serial entrepreneur, active angel investor, and software executive with over 25 years of experience in building, scaling, and successfully acquiring and selling multiple companies. With a proven track record of creating and leading innovative products and businesses across the fields of AI, cloud security, IT service management, and identity and access management, his current vision is to transform how work gets done in the back office with zero-touch, self-driving, autonomous solutions that leverage AI, machine learning, natural language processing, and cloud computing. Welcome to the Bear Hug Experience. And now, dear friends, fellow entrepreneurs, investors, and startup enthusiasts, here is Rohit Gupta. Rohit, thanks so much for coming on the show. I really appreciate you doing this. I know we've been trying to line this up for a number of months. How are you feeling coming into this today?
Yeah, thanks a lot, Craig. Glad to be here. Feeling good. Look, you and I have gotten to know each other over the last couple of years, and looking forward to our conversation here today.
Yeah, we've done a bunch of projects together and we've learned a lot together. And this is going to be a fun conversation to look back and reflect on some of those learning lessons. So I'm excited about this as well.
No, indeed. Likewise, looking forward to it.
Well, why don't we start with the mission that you're on and tell our listeners what you're up to these days and why it matters.
Indeed. Look, Craig, as you know, I've been in enterprise software all my career. I am, I founded a company called Auditoria. Think of the word auditor with an IA at the end, which is essentially an AI-based technology to help the finance suite, the office of the CFO, use the power of AI to transform what they're doing on a day-to-day basis. I think, as you know, as I'm sure many of your listeners know, the finance back office function is generally, one of those that sort of is behind the scenes doing a lot of the number crunching and a lot of the transactional work to frankly keep the business humming. And they don't, normally get a lot of the limelight. But what Auditoria intends to deliver is technology that can frankly help transform what they do, how they do it, in a manner that they can essentially be better partners for the business and drive real value to their customers and the various stakeholders that they engage with. And so, it's an early stage, tech startup. It's an exciting time. I mean, we are witnessing an unprecedented, era of, innovation in AI and digital transformation. The demand for intelligent solutions, across the board, whether it's in the front office, whether it's in customer support, whether it's in the office of the CFO, is soaring as businesses seek, efficiency and accuracy and foresight in their operations. So it's an exciting time for us as, we're building this technology that is the convergence of AI and finance, really sort of shaping this new paradigm of incredible possibilities. So that's what's going on, if you will, in my world, and exciting to be on the forefront of this innovation.
Well, yeah, I remember when we first met, you talked about the possibility, like this was really early days, right? You mentioned to me, Kraig, we're probably a little bit too early, or maybe we're just right in terms of our timing. And I know we'll get more into that too, but you've had incredible vision, understanding what's coming. And I'll be curious to dig into the story more with sort of your previous business, Palerra, and that whole journey into seeing this opportunity with Auditoria and then jumping in and then being able to ride this wave of AI advancements that we've all experienced over the last couple of years. So when you think about this experience you've had with enterprise software and having dedicated your whole professional career to this world, what have you learned about yourself that makes you so perfectly attuned to be involved in this sector of the economy? And specifically, what superpowers or super passions do you possess that give you the ability to drive this entire vision you've had in this enterprise technology ecosystem?
Yeah. It's an interesting question. Look, I mean, I think one of the things that I pride myself on, Craig, is really sort of having the ability to take something that is ambiguous, at the very early stage, right? It's ambiguous. It's, think of it like clay, and you got to mold it into something that over time gets definition and gets more structure and more form and becomes something that's valuable, right, to the consumer, if you will, off that offering. And so, for me, right from the get go, I've thrived on essentially digging into a problem statement that probably is not as well defined. I'm sure you've heard the adage. I'm sure your listeners have. There's something there, right? There's something there. For me, is a great spot to dig in. And I love sort of getting involved at that early stage and trying to, tease out, the various details and the various moving parts, and then working through, the insane amount of challenges that you typically see at that super early stage, giving the technology structure and definition and iterating quickly, and being able to essentially validate and gain validation, gain acceptance with an initial amount of stakeholders, and then bring that out to market. I don't know if I'd call that a superpower, but that's something that I feel I'm really good at, and the ability to distill those learnings from something that is ambiguous, where there's lack of clarity, where it's a little dense in these early days, and then being able to essentially connect the dots to get to something that is clear and that is precise and that has quantifiable, measurable value is something that I just absolutely thrive on. And so that has shaped a lot of what we've done over the last 3 or 4 years. A lot of learnings. That customer centricity in those early days is critical to success. A lot of people will, in my mind, be polite to you just because they know you and they don't want to offend you, and they want to be they want to be positive about what you're doing, but that doesn't necessarily help, if you will, in determining whether you've got something real or not. And so, really digging through that, and then finding out the specifics and what works and what's not going to work, and how do you position appropriately. I think that's what I would say I'm good at, and I feel like I thrive on, and again goes back to why I enjoy working on early stage ventures.
Do you have a way of labeling that superpower in a condensed manner, whether it's a couple of words or a single word? Is there a way to encapsulate it?
Um, I mean, I'd say that it's adaptability and resilience.
Mm.
Adaptability because it requires that internal your internal DNA to be able to adjust and not be wedded or tied or have a mindset that what you came up with originally is spot on and everything has to sort of fit that mold. You've got to be adaptable. and then the internal resilience, because you're going to face, rejections and, negative, input, and you're going to face challenges, roadblocks for the unknowns, right? If you know what the unknowns are, that's great. You can go tackle them. If you don't know what the unknowns are, that makes it a little harder. So it's one of these where, the resilience to work through that. Resilience, I think, shows up in different facets. But to me, I think those two are probably how I would characterize it or what have you, and apply that to that early stage venture.
And your passion that you have for solving these types of problems and taking this clay, this ambiguous concept where you can see the potential for value and then being able to shape it and mold it into something that is measurably going to make that impact. What drove you to move your focus in an enterprise direction versus a consumer direction? Is there any context there just to why did you gravitate toward the business side versus the consumer side in terms of technology?
Yeah. No, that's a good question. I think that's a little bit of that goes to my background, and some of it sort of the early days of my career. I was I've got by academia degrees in computer engineering and computer science, and I started off, my thesis for my master's, for example, was in optimizing query techniques for what used to be called back in the day very large databases. Like this is like pre big data.
Yeah.
I'm dating myself a little bit there, but that sort of then logically sort of led me to transactional systems, and working on environments that were large, messy, heavy enterprise environments that required those level of performance tuning and operational characteristics and such. And from that point of time, it just carried on. So I just absolutely loved working with business problems, with businesses that had to deal with those sorts of business challenges. And for me, the opportunity to then parlay what started off as a software engineering career, and then eventually into product management, and then running large divisions, large product lines, all the way to eventually starting and running my own company has been a terrific journey.
That's awesome. So it seems like a very natural thing that you were just pointed at, and it just snowballed from there. We'll get into your story momentarily, but let's flip to the other side of sort of the super passion or superpower. What about your kryptonite? What are the things that you find are kind of wearing you down or suck your energy while you're on this path? Just because it's never easy, right? There's certain things you personally run into with your own frustrations and irritations about your own limitations or areas of improvement that you have, or there's just certain headwinds that in this particular venture you have to kind of deal with. So what can you say about your anti-passions or the sort of the kryptonites in your life, in your world?
Yeah. I'd say there's one that sort of, I think, is head and shoulders above everything else, and that is, process bureaucracy. I mean, I just absolutely don't stand for it. I feel that, it wears me down. I feel that it's one of those where I've got to remind myself every night, if I encounter situations either internally or, within my own company, or, outside working with external stakeholders, that, that look, this is the real world, right? And the real world is geared towards, maintaining the status quo. Let's call it that way. And if you're gonna maintain the status quo, I mean, that's the real world that we live in. And part of the reason why there are processes and bureaucratic approval structures and 35 different hoops that you've got to go through before stuff gets done is because companies are built in a manner as they've scaled over decades to, for lack of a better word, maintain the status quo. The status quo is basically what gives them the ability to ensure that they don't lose out on things. But for me, that's it is fatiguing, frustrating, annoying, in that sequence. And for me, I endeavor to try and cut through the chaff as such wherever possible, so that I can truly sort of think about the shortest the shortest distance between two dots is a straight line, right? And hopefully one can get there rather than sort of wind around like 15 different ways eventually to connect from spot A to spot B, I guess. So that would be my what I would probably consider, my kryptonite.
So to give our listeners a window into your origin story, where you come from, I'm going to ask you to tell me your life story in 5 minutes. I do this with candidates, and it's really fun. In the first 5 or 10 minutes of meeting them, I'll say, let's just do a quick exercise. Look at the clock, 5 minutes. I want you to tell me your whole life story. Whatever comes out, it's fine. You can't make a mistake with it, but tell me what the most important things I need to know about you and what matters. Go. So I want to have you do the same thing, starting with your history and leading up to the present day, and just see what comes out with a 5-minute time cap.
Yeah, sounds good. Sounds good. So let's see. I was born in Sri Lanka. I was born into a family that actually, my parents, my grandparents, worked, for the United Nations, believe it or not. And so I call it the classic traveling salesman job, where they're posted in different countries for, a few years at a time. And it so happened that in one of those, I was born, in Sri Lanka. And so I've had the benefit, if you will, of having seen quite a few different spots, if you will, through growing up and such. Hometown for me, I consider as Mumbai in India. That's where my parents are from, and that's where my folks retired when when all was said and done. I think it's one of the fantastic cities in the world. For me, while growing up, look, always was interested in sport, in reading. I was an incredibly voracious reader. Enjoyed all the things that kids used to do before mobile phones and devices showed up, I suppose. But probably in my 20s is sort of where I made the pivot as I really sort of gotten into engineering, and the opportunity to really sort of understand how computing infrastructure first came about. That for me was just absolutely fantastic. Like I mentioned, I did my bachelor's in computer engineering, my master's in computer sciences. I just loved, getting my hands, rolling up my sleeves, getting my hands dirty with new and, at the time, relatively immature, technology. And for me, there was nothing better than sitting working till 2 a.m. Coding away something, or working on a project with a few others, and things of that sort. This is sort of going back 30 plus years ago. I've got to say that I'll give a shout out to a couple of folks here through my career journey. I will specifically call out two individuals. A gentleman by the name of Rod Hansamore. Rod's a good friend of mine. I believe he's at SAP these days. I worked for him. He hired me at Sun Microsystems. Sun was one of the bellwethers in the early, dot-com growth that took place in the late 90s. And I learned an incredible amount from him, right? Just being part of his team and just seeing how he would engage with, business partners, large and small, and the ability, if you will, to create, just incredible go-to-market programs. And he welcomed me into the team at a time that, I was sort of making the transition, if you will, from classic software engineering to more of the go-to-market side of the house. And then the other, individual that I'll give a shout out to is a gentleman by the name of Amit Jasuja. Amit's a good friend of mine. He hired me at Oracle in 2005. He was actually relocating back from Boston to California, and Oracle was in the middle of a massive transition. They were essentially building out a middleware division, software division, and very specifically within that, identity management was a brand new area that was being formed. And Amit hired me to essentially be, one of his lieutenants to essentially help go build out that identity management business for Oracle. We took that from inception to about 360 million in revenues in about 5.5 years. So it was a fantastic learning experience. We did several acquisitions, built and scaled that business. Both of these, guys are good friends of mine now. Just A+ individuals, but really sort of helped shape the thinking of how do you either deliver fantastic go-to-market programs or build franchise software businesses, right? With thousands of customers, hundreds of millions of dollars in revenue, organic and inorganic growth. And that really sort of shaped my thinking, and it helped me, if you will, propel myself into the next sort of phase of my career with what I've done since, right? And so from that point of time, I took it further, was the GM for the Remedy division over at BMC Software, built and scaled that, built out their first couple of SaaS offerings. And then, I've been in the startup world for the last, give or take, a little more than 10 years. I've been fortunate enough, if you will, to have had a fantastic run. My last company, Palerra, which I, co-founded with a good friend of mine, Ganesh Kirti. We had a great run. We scaled the business, and eventually Oracle acquired us in the fall of 2016. And then here with Auditoria, which I started with my co-founders, Adina, Samu, and Gaurav Bhatia, we're on to a really good, trajectory after trying to figure out a couple of years of figuring out how do we best position this for this era of AI, and working on that right now. So that's a little bit of my sort of journey in give or take about 5 minutes.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you for that. So this journey that you took from engineering to product to then becoming the founder of several companies and being a prolific investor too, if I'm not mistaken. I'm always curious what shapes people's interest. I mean, it sounds like your progression into the fascination that you had with computing infrastructure. Were there any early influences that pointed you in that direction? Or was it literally just out of all the things that a young person is looking at that are happening in the world and where they can plug in and find that fix for the things that are interesting and attractive to them? Were there any pivotal moments where you had to decide one path versus the other and made any sort of pivots in there? Or were you pretty straight focused on computing infrastructure that you saw coming about?
Yeah. So look, I mean, I think one of the things that I pride myself on is this. I just had this desire, this curiosity to learn more, to ask questions if I'm not clear about something, right? No ego in asking questions, right? I mean, it's one of those where learning never stops.
Yeah.
And so the other aspect to this, which I think for me has helped me a lot, is it doesn't faze me to get out of my comfort zone, right? To embrace something new wholeheartedly. And so that, though, the combination of those two things is essentially, in my mind, what has helped me or propel sort of my journey pretty extensively. And by that, what I mean is, the opportunity to ask questions, the opportunity to learn a little bit more, through my journey. For example, in the decade of 2000 to the 2010s, I'd made a bunch of acquisitions on the buy side, and some of them were large companies, some of them were startups. And so I was fascinated with sort of how the startups, came down the path of trying to essentially align on a problem statement and then agree on the technology approach and then go raise money and then, build out their business. And so for me, the intellectual curiosity to learn about that, I think, was something that I think held me in good stead. And then, like I mentioned, the other dimension to this is sort of the getting out of the comfort zone. I've been fortunate. Look, I'm married. I've got 2 kids who are a little older now, but it's one of these where I've been incredibly supportive by my wife, and who's been an absolute rock through we're coming up on almost 25 years, if you will, of being married. So it's one of these where having that support system that allows me to venture into areas that would otherwise seem risky and and probably not prudent, right? If you've got a young family and things of that sort. I've been fortunate, if you will, to be able to have that support system that allowed me to venture into areas where I'm out of my comfort zone. I'm learning on the fly. I'm not sure. The path isn't clear, and then gives me the ability to charter a course that I believe in. Of course, I've got to have the ability to execute, and I think I'm pretty good at that as well. I wouldn't do that if I didn't have that confidence. But I'd say that those some of those attributes I think have helped me, uh, you know, drive towards sort of where I am today and what I'm doing right now.
And we should give a shout out to Victoria too, right?
Yeah, indeed. She certainly deserves a lot of kudos for keeping my calendar in decent shape. Indeed, I wouldn't be as organized, at least as organized as I come across without her efforts. No doubt about it.
And she's been around for a while too as your assistant, yeah?
She's been around for a few years, indeed.
Well, when you look back and you consider the vision that you had in your early developmental years, what was your thought process around entrepreneurship? Was it on your radar one day to own and run a company, or were you more just happy to be deeply involved in solving these complex technical problems?
Yeah. Look, I'd be lying if I were to say that. Yeah, no, it was always on my list to go start a company. Um, I think for me, like I mentioned, I had the incredible benefit and the opportunity to get a first-hand view to startups and see some of the most innovative and compelling new innovations during my tenure at Oracle in the 2000s. And as part of that, I had the opportunity to acquire a few of them and do diligence in a few others and such. But the opportunity there really sort of gave me a little bit of that ringside view of what the journey entailed. Now, clearly, looking at it from the outside in is nowhere close to what a founder experiences every day.
Yeah.
But at least it gave me a sense of, okay, look past the glamour, right? Look past the press releases of companies raising the tens of millions of dollars or whatever. But here's sort of what that journey involves. And for me, what was gratifying was, look, I was able to parlay some of those the learnings and the intellectual curiosity that I think I possessed, to leverage that into a career in venture and building out companies and building and scaling them. Look, I mean, I think the entrepreneurial journey is has got, I'm sure we'll be talking about it, has got its own winding path, and everyone's got their own challenges. Every day is new, and the objective is to improve every day, right? We improve 1% every day, and over a period of time, that's a measurable amount of improvement. And that's the approach, right? The approach is not to assume that we have all the answers. The approach is to be as close to customers so that they can guide and make recommendations on how they want your technology to evolve. You've got to have a point of view that basically solves a business problem for them better than anything else that they have. If you don't have that, you're probably not going to go too far. But once you have that, then it's about being willing to to take in that input, be willing to take in that the learnings, and then craft your journey accordingly. And so that's really sort of, in a nutshell, sort of my sort of entry into the startup world, really driven by the incredible good fortune I had of seeing some of these companies during my tenure at Oracle in the 2000s, and then parlaying my own intellectual curiosity and desire to get out of my comfort zone by identifying a couple of problem statements, and then really buckling down to figure out a way to go execute it.
It sounds like the influence that Rod and Amit had on you and that experience you had at Oracle was really critical to that ability to devise those problem statements and start testing some of those hypotheses. When you think about your journey from Sri Lanka to Mumbai and you looked at the US either as a market or as a place to migrate to, what was that journey like and what compelled you to come over to the States?
Yeah, look, I mean, I think there were a couple of dimensions to this. I had the benefit of having family members who had migrated to the U.S. before, and frankly were either professors or in academia teaching or doing their PhDs and things of that sort. So I had there were certainly conversations happening at home around the art of the possible and what that meant and what did it mean as far as the career opportunity for them and such. And then of course this was a time also where India was going through this first level of opening up the economy, right, in the early 90s, and what that meant was you were getting exposure to a variety of brands that would otherwise, keep in mind this is pre-internet era, right? So you're getting exposure to the first set of brands that essentially you'd only sort of heard of in books and newspapers and print ads and things of that sort. And so it was one of these where um, the desire at that point was, like I said, at an early age for me was getting out of that comfort zone and being comfortable getting out of the comfort zone. And that's something that I like I said, I hold greatly to that till today. I'd like to actually think my kids have actually inherited some of that from me. My daughter, for example, is she decided to leave California and move over to northeast Quebec up in Canada,
Oh, wow.
and a few years ago. And it's all about, again, just getting out of that comfort zone and being able to and having the courage of your convictions that you'll figure out a way to craft your path. And that's something that I think held me in good stead. I was just absolutely fascinated with computing infrastructure, computer engineering, semiconductor programming, microprocessor programming in those early days. So I was looking for ways by which I could, learn more and essentially get deeper engaged in that. And then from there, essentially came the opportunity, to undertake what now has been a close to a 30-year journey with just some incredible experiences in enterprise software.
Making the transition from the experience you had at Oracle and then coming up with a problem statement for what then became Palerra, working with Ganesh, that was a pretty significant jump outside your comfort zone. Is that right? Can you walk us through sort of the problem statement of Palerra and making that transition into entrepreneurship from Oracle?
Yeah, so this was actually, the transition was from BMC Software. I was running the remedy division at BMC after Oracle, so I had a 3-year stint there. And yeah, let me give you a little bit of what that insights were as we came up with the concept of what eventually became Palerra. Look, the cloud was just starting to take form. And one of the challenges that we came across, particularly as we heard about customers, Salesforce.com obviously was the sort of the poster child for enterprise applications in the cloud. This is in 2010.
Mm-hmm.
Amazon AWS had started, but it wasn't quite the behemoth that it is today. But what we found was customers, what they benefited from was the financial flexibility, or at least what appeared to be attractive was the financial flexibility to leverage their OpEx, budgets for consuming software. But importantly, they also wanted to get away from the maintenance and the overhead of managing the infrastructure and such that these applications ran on. So the ability to consume this, much like you plugged in a phone into the phone line when landlines were the primary sort of communication tools out there. It's basically consuming this as a service, which was really sort of starting to take form. But what we found were enterprises, like the classic enterprise companies, not the mid-markets, not the SMBs, but the enterprise companies. They still had this requirement, and I'm going to call it. It initially started off as maybe bureaucratic procedures, but eventually, I think with good reason, that they were like, okay, we need to essentially have control, visibility, and we need to have an understanding of what is going on in the cloud applications. It's great for my end users to consume these services through a browser, like open up a browser, log into a site, voila, I'm using it. Fantastic. But what's happening behind the scenes? Mm-hmm. Like who is monitoring what's going on? Who's actually touching my data? Who is reviewing the permissions and the access control, primitives for those applications themselves? Do if you're the service provider, if you're the SaaS provider, do you have, systems administrators that are actually logging in and looking at sort of my personal data, right? Things of that sort. These were real, legitimate problems that enterprises, were faced with, and they were asking these questions to the SaaS companies, to the infrastructure as a service companies, over and over again, and there were no good answers. And so, what we came up with at the time was an approach which we thought was pretty cool, was pretty unique, which was, eventually the market called it Cloud Access Security Brokers, or CASB. That's the acronym that I think Gartner came up with for that segment. I guess Gartner, a lot of the analyst firms, they all come up with, you got to tag a particular segment with a particular acronym, and this was the Gartner acronym. But essentially, it was all about providing visibility and then control over what is happening inside the cloud. And we, took an approach which was API first. Mm-hmm. We felt that if we could harness the power of APIs to be able to then provide visibility and insights and analytics of what is happening in your applications, in your infrastructure, who's actually touching your data, who's actually logging in, are there, malicious threats happening there? Are there, people trying to behind the scenes, send your data out to remote locations that are suspicious, right? Things of that sort. That is sort of what we eventually, locked in on. And again, it started off as a thesis, mm-hmm. and then very quickly it was about iterating and validating the thesis, and then figuring out that, okay, there are a couple of different, approaches, technical approaches to solving this problem. APIs was one. Solving it using network traffic was another. We took the API approach, and we were, there were a handful of companies that did one approach. There were a handful that did the other. There were a few that said, "Hey, we're going to be large enough. We're going to do both." But yeah, that's how that journey started, and we had some great success. We were fortunate to partner with some incredible thought leaders, right, at companies like Network Appliance and Jeffries and Blue Cross Blue Shield, and folks that essentially were making moves to go into the cloud. We partnered with Levi Strauss up here in San Francisco. Just some A-plus individuals. Again, would love to give a shout out to my good friend Ramin Safai. Ramin was the Chief Information Security Officer at Jeffries. And he saw the potential in the cloud and security for the cloud early on. Another shout out, right, to Colin Anderson and Steve Zalewski over at Levi's when they were at Levi's. Just absolutely stellar InfoSec leaders. And that, they partnered with us. We were fortunate to learn from them and build a stellar franchise. And again, we just had some fantastic experiences working with companies in financial services and high tech and retail and hospitality. all of which eventually resulted in building and scaling, and then eventually an acquisition in the fall of 2016.
So when you look at acquisitions versus continuing to build out the product, that's always a really interesting moment for a founder, right? Do you continue to grow it, or there's some strategic reason for being gobbled up by something larger that you can plug into and hopefully make an even bigger impact? And then there's obviously this period where acquisitions have an earnout, right? Can we talk through that transition?
Yeah. Look, I mean, see um, it's always a incredibly sort of gut wrenching, challenging sort of decision when you make the decision to proceed forward with the acquisition. It is not easy at all, and I distinctly remember long nights, long evenings, plenty of fist, whatever, stomping on tables and things of that nature to sort of make our points. Um, um,
That is
but
that is that, is that when you
but
started? Is that when you started your pacing that you do?
no, I'm saddled with that, for quite a while before that. I guess I think that was a function, if you will, of just the number of calls that I normally do on a typical day or a typical week. That I think it's better to give my feet a little bit of movement and dynamics as opposed to just being tied to like one spot, I guess. So
Yeah.
no, but coming back to your question, look, it's hard, right? There is no single silver bullet answer that I can sort of say that, hey, look, this was the point where it was the aha moment that we said it made sense.
Mm.
As founders, I'll be brutally honest here. Look, there's a sense of defeat, and there's a sense of sort of letting yourself and others down when you accept the fact that, okay, we're gonna go through the acquisition, we're gonna partner with another entity, and then frankly have them scale us forward. But at the same point of time, if you're surrounding yourself with the right set of mentors and leaders, and I was fortunate again on the venture side to have the sounding board of Gaurav Garg from Wing Ventures and Pramod Haq at Norwest Ventures, who were my early backers at Palerra, where they were they helped me and Ganesh think through the implications of accepting an acquisition and moving forward with that. Um, at the end of the day, we had seen a few moves in the market. We'd seen, companies like Cisco and Microsoft and Symantec make acquisitions of our competitors. The last thing that any startup wants is to be kind of the last man standing. We certainly weren't. There were several others that were still, if you will, in the market that we felt that we could compete with and execute well. But there's also something to be said that at a mid-stage startup, you still have 15, 20 sales teams, whereas when you're competing with the likes of a Microsoft or a Cisco, they've got hundreds of sales teams, depending on the division, depending on the group they're in. And so that tacit understanding that in order to compete at that level of scale, you're either going to want to need an incredible amount of capital that you're going to have to raise, or you're going to have to essentially have a way by which you can get leverage and indirect distribution scale. That was something that we realized. I think I had the opportunity, like I said, to gain from the incredible experience that Gaurav and Pramod had garnered through their careers. And I think the decision that we made was the right decision at the time. We were able to find a tremendous partner with Oracle. They were in the middle of essentially building and scaling out their cloud products and cloud infrastructure division.
Mm.
A lot of our technology and a lot of our people are still there, right? I mean, they're still, gainfully employed and innovating, if you will, for with Oracle out there. And so, from my vantage point, I think It's a testimony, if you will, to the talent that we had established, that Oracle still believes in. But that decision is not easy, and it's certainly not something that I take lightly. But like I said, I was fortunate enough to have the air cover and the experience of some incredible venture leaders to lean on as we made that decision.
And how long was it after that acquisition that you knew you were going to start incubating the next thing? Or I'm just kind of curious what your mindset was there during that period of transition to starting Auditoria.
Yeah. See, I mean, I think for me personally, what I'll say is that, look, I had a great experience at Oracle. I think so incredibly highly of that team. Thomas Kurian was our president. He was running the division that I was part of. There were some stellar executive talent, right? Folks like Amit Zaveri, and who's now at Google, and Peter Barker, who's the chief product officer over at ForgeRock and Ping Identity. Just some incredible talent. And so for me, there was never a mindset that, hey, this was going to be I'm going to be there. I'm going to be there for for my sort of whatever holdback period, or for a certain window of time, and then I've got to be out figuring out something else. So for me, it was just an opportunity, if you will, to stay through the my tenure, to continue to help Oracle build out its cloud and cloud security offerings. And then organically, right? I mean, it's all about just that intellectual curiosity and the ongoing desire to push yourself out of the comfort zone. That, to me, like I said, are attributes that just define me. And so for me, it was just one of those where if I had that opportunity, I knew that I would certainly scratch an itch, and I would try to learn more about it. I was fortunate enough to be really well connected in sort of the venture ecosystem, and so there were folks that kept reaching out, like, "Are you interested in taking a look at this thing or the other thing and such?" And eventually, I settled on a business problem that that has now become Auditoria, right? I was fortunate enough to validate the early dimensions of the business problem with with a few amazing leaders. Tyler Sloat, who at the time was the CFO at Zuora. He's now the chief financial officer over at Freshworks. Don Fernandez, who was the chief financial officer at ForgeRock, and I believe he's now the CFO at Improbata, a private equity-backed company, doing really well, and others. And as part of that, we agreed on a hypothesis that if we could, we saw that there was a tremendous amount of transactional work that finance teams were dealing with and were taking on, and they were challenged with how they had to deal with the resources and tooling that they had. And with sort of this upcoming wave of AI and language-based interactions, to automate and to help orchestrate transactions within, in this case, the back office function, we felt that, look, if we could build something in that domain, this could add some real value. So that was the early hypothesis. We continued to build and scale on that. But going back to your question, it was really all about, like I said, there wasn't a cookie cutter clock that was sort of ticking down or such. It was just the natural progression. And eventually, like I said, the combination of my intellectual curiosity and desire to challenge myself to get out of my comfort zone. I could very well be comfortable and working in at Oracle, because like I said, I genuinely had some amazing relationships. I think very, very highly of that leadership team. They're a great company, and again, over time, it was just like I said, my intellectual curiosity and desire to push myself outside my comfort zone that propelled me to start Auditoria.
Well, one thing I've learned working with you that has been unique compared to any other client I've worked with, you have pushed me harder than any other client ever has. And what that's done is made me better in every single way. I've learned more from you probably than from anybody I've worked with. And you've had so many different unique contrarian views on how to build companies. And another thing I've learned about you is you came out of the womb with a sense of urgency, unlike anybody I've met. I mean, your intellectual curiosity, your wanting to put yourself outside the comfort zone, and this speed and urgency that you have. I don't know if you've ever sourced the root of where that comes from, but I have found that to be such a unique attribute that makes you Rohit to me. And I relate with it because I have a similar sense of urgency and speed. But I know that's been just a huge benefit to you as you have tried to solve these really complex, challenging problems. When you look at this timing with AI, what is unique about the way that you looked at working with this, what is normally a very risk averse buying center with the office of the CFO? I'm curious how you look at gaining this department's support and translating this unique perspective you have on AI, and specifically what is unique about the AI that you're working on.
Yeah, yeah. No, thank you for asking that. And I appreciate the kind words there as well. Look, in 2024, when we're having this conversation, you and
Mm-hmm.
I can, with a great amount of certainty say that the future of the industry is undeniably intertwined with AI, right?
Yeah,
And everyone's going to be like, yeah, tell me something I don't know. I mean, uh, uh, you know, um, uh, but in 2019, which was not that long ago,
I know.
right? 4.5 years ago, give or take, you would basically, if you were to bring up AI, and more importantly, AI to this, what is considered a classic risk-averse conservative buying center, they're paid to be risk-averse. You'd get a lot of folks that would be like, yeah, well, let's talk when, in a few years when this
Yeah,
thing is real, or when
yeah.
this thing is ready for prime time, right? Where I'm not having to second guess and question its accuracy and integrity and what have you. Um, that being said, because of the fact that we had this hypothesis, our core team, our founding team, including some of our early engineers, we had this hypothesis that if one could build a proprietary domain specific language model that is trained on a corpus of data that is, again, domain specific,
Mm-hmm.
not the general internet, not Reddit, not
Mm-hmm.
you
Mm-hmm.
know
Twitter or whatever, right? Yeah.
Slashdot or
Yeah.
Twitter or
Yeah.
whatever, right? X or what have you.
Uh-huh.
But it is purpose built for this particular domain, the domain of finance and procurement and accounting, which means it's trained on things such as invoices, bills, purchase orders, right? Think of the kinds of things that finance teams have to deal with, the kinds of documents and the material that they've got to deal with. We felt that there would be an opportunity that would show up and would show up soon enough where the challenges. See, look, I mean, companies have been trying to automate processes, transactional processes for decades, right? I mean, there were attempts by business process management tools, robotic process automation or RPA tools.
Mm-hmm.
As far as I'm concerned, some of them have generated incredible, shareholder value. But as far if you truly look at sort of have they transformed the experience of the companies that actually use them, I would say the resounding answer is no.
Hmm.
They've underdelivered big time, and
Hmm.
the reason they've underdelivered is because they were built on a technology footprint that was 20 years old, right? That had dependencies, was incredibly brittle. They had client specific dependencies. It was expensive to maintain. You needed an army of developers to implement those, so on and so forth. And so we felt that for business users, the power came in if you could leverage the fundamentals of natural language processing, but purpose built for this particular domain. And that's really at the heart of what our founding thesis was. And so you might remember this when we spoke, a few years ago, right? It was, look, we're building this technology that is, again, purpose built for the domain of finance, accounting, and procurement. And we've obviously now benefited from some of the tailwinds that the open AIs and the chat GPTs, if you will, have essentially been able to provide the entire industry as a whole. This is not to say that the finance buying center all of a sudden is less conservative or less risk averse. Far from it. But what we have is an innate ability to demonstrate value through use cases that showcase how they can iteratively gain value from the principles of AI and generative AI and such. We've also been incredibly fortunate to partner with some of the flagship ERP players, right? So, I've got to give a shout out here to Workday. Workday is an investor in my company, Auditoria. Workday Ventures is, and they are have been an incredible partner, right? So our ability to partner very closely with their research and development teams under Terence Wampler, who's the group GM for the financial management business over at Workday, Andy Kershaw and his teams. It's been great. It's been great because it has given us the opportunity to litmus test our assumptions in large, complex enterprise environments, enterprise transactional environments, and then be able to collectively demonstrate value in there. So, that's a little bit about Auditoria, my thoughts there. Look, I think AI will revolutionize every facet of financial management, right? From forecasting and analysis to compliance to accounting transactions. And the reality is that, those who embrace these AI-driven opportunities and solutions, they will gain a competitive edge. Whereas those who resist, I suspect, will fall behind over time. And so, that's the journey that we're on.
Back to this point I made earlier where you told me, like, Kraig, I don't know if we're too early or not. We might be perfectly positioned. And then, what is it, like a year and a half ago when kind of OpenAI came on the scene? Was that roughly a year and a half ago? Is that about right?
I think so. I think it was late 22. Yep.
So when you and I were talking years ago, you were hoping for the consciousness to shift in this direction, and then it has. And I'm curious, did that meet your timeline expectations and what you were hoping for? And did it really make an impact? You said that it may really not shift the conservative nature of this finance buying center, but it has made an impact in terms of the mainstream conversation, right?
It has made an impact now. I will say, I mean, I can unabashedly or unreservedly, I can state that we were early when we started. No doubt about it, right? I mean, I think what we realize in hindsight's 2020, as we know, but what we realize in hindsight is that the early signs were promising, but early promising signs do not necessarily translate into a desire to actually test out and to validate and battle test the technology until there is some sort of tipping point. And the tipping point, honestly, was late 2022 or the second half of 2022, where OpenAI had been around for 8 to 10 years prior to that, but it was only when ChatGPT came out in, I think, October of that year was when you started seeing that tipping point of interest emerge. And then 2023 was fabulous because everyone sort of starting to talk about language models, and now you've got the opportunities with players like Anthropic and Meta with Llama 2 and obviously Google doing what they are. It's an incredibly exciting time, right? Auditoria, we're thrilled. We are proud to be the first enterprise application for the Office of the CFO that gives companies that flexibility and the choice to use either GPT from OpenAI or on Azure, on the Microsoft stack, or Llama 2 in a fully controlled Amazon environment, or Gemini from Google.
Oh, wow.
Right? So enterprises who want that flexibility and to use their choice or their preference of language model providers, you can now get that with Auditoria, specifically purpose built for the office of the CFO. So that is something that again we've been able to to accelerate. We're again, like I said, excited to bring this to market, and and of course we're benefiting like so many others are from some of the tailwinds that AI has seen here over the last 12 to 18 months. But again, it's just the beginning. I kind of feel like, to use a baseball metaphor, this is like the top of the first inning. I mean, this is like the game has just started. Like, first pitch was just thrown, and we've got a long ways to go before the story is done.
Well, there's a lot of lessons that you've learned over the last few years, and I want to go through a few of those in a minute here. But a quick shout out to all the ERP vendors that really should be talking to Auditoria, right? Same with anyone working at SAP, Accenture, PwC, or even startup founders, right?
That's exactly right. If you are an application provider that's building enterprise applications, that's got a corpus of ERP or procurement applications, you should be talking to Auditoria. You should be talking to us if you aren't already, to figure out how we can accelerate and essentially help our customers, your customers, gain the best of all worlds. So absolutely yes.
Well, can we talk about some of the whoa moments or aha moments? I mean, if you look back on the last few years, I know you and Nick's also been on the podcast, but you guys have been through a lot together. He was the first person I helped you hire years ago, and you guys have had quite the journey. Can we talk about some of the biggest whoa moments, pivots you've made, and what's really shocked or surprised you over the last few years?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, and this is what as I mentioned, at the outset, right? Which is, everyone looks at the glamour of startups with the funding announcements and all of that sort of stuff, and thinks that it's a straight line that connects two dots. That's never the case. Honestly, crises are inevitable, but how you respond to them is what defines our leadership. It defines our character. And honestly, in times of crisis, in times of uncertainty, right, it's important to have a level of transparency, but decisiveness as well, right? It's paramount. And so this is I think held us in good stead as we've navigated through some tricky times. I mean, I'll talk about a couple that I think might make sense sharing. Like, one of them really sort of centers around the fact that we probably hired a little bit ahead of the curve in terms of where we were in the market. And I think that, in hindsight, is probably something that I probably shouldn't have done. And you think that hey, I've been down the startup journey before, and in hindsight it seems obvious and such. But look, I mean, you learn from some of the mistakes that you make, and this was one of them, right? And which was centered around the fact that I probably made the leap of faith assumption that the technology was getting ready for prime time. Keep in mind that ChatGPT had not yet hit the limelight, and so all the more reason where those tailwinds weren't quite there. And so it was one of those where one in hindsight, one would have probably taken a little bit more of a measured approach in terms of building and scaling out my go-to-market team. I think the other piece that I would also sort of probably talk about is that when you're selling for an early stage startup, even if you're selling to that buying center, in this case, the office of the CFO, the relationships that you might have gained when you were at a big brand company that offered products for that buying center doesn't necessarily translate into what a startup needs. And by that, what I mean is, what we should hire for is adaptability, attitude, the willingness to learn, pivot, change, and have that innate ear of the customer requirements to help drive your pitch and your prospecting strategies. I think that's something that we've learned. I think we've learned the hard way. I think we've gotten better at that, and I owe Nick an immense sense of gratitude for helping me and helping Auditoria, if you will, get us on this path, which is this tacit learning that, look, we just have to have our ear to the ground. Let's listen more than we pitch, and then let's look for those patterns of repeatability across these different customers. So these were some of the things that I would say are that we've learned. I will say one additional change that I executed at this point a little over a year ago was dramatically narrowing the aperture of where I'm pointing the needle in terms of prospecting, in terms of where I want to go to market. Um, it in Again, hindsight seems obvious. You might think that, why didn't we do that right up front? Uh, you know, that's the lessons we learn, right, through this journey. And I've been fortunate that has that that move and that decision has paid off in spades for Auditoria. Narrowing the aperture of where we are pointing the needle, um, dramatically reducing the let's call it the SAM, the serviceable addressable market
Mm-hmm.
that we wanted to play in, has helped us immensely. So for any other entrepreneur, startup founder that's listening to this, um, you know, reduce your aperture, reduce the SAM that you want to hone in on. Demonstrate success. Get your first 30, 40, 50 wins in the smallest possible SAM as possible before you decide to, expand and increase your aperture. And that, I think, was a decision I should have probably, in hindsight, made 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago. But we made that decision, a little over a year ago, and it has helped us in spades. Our business, has grown fantastically well, triple digit growth plus in 2023, or on to another banner year here in 2024. Incredibly exciting times. But again, it all comes through these scars and these stripes that that we go through, that we learn through this journey.
Can we go one level deeper on this narrowing the aperture idea? Because I'm curious, when we first started talking, there was a certain deal size target initially. There was a segment of the market that were using certain tools or platforms rather that you could plug into. And then it seemed over time you went a bit higher up the market and you had sort of defined, companies of a certain revenue using certain tooling and such that you could plug into. Was narrowing the aperture just a matter of going a little bit more up market? Because you already have your definition of your target, right? It's just the office of the CFO and everybody in it. What did that really look like when you narrowed in? And I'm really wanting to understand how that translated to such a huge impact in the transformation that you've had in growth. Because it seems like a lot of times when I'm talking to my clients and they're talking about product readiness, a lot of times they'll target smaller companies who don't have as much complex requirements from a product perspective, and they go up market later. Or maybe they'll start going up market and try to just land a couple of key customers who have really complex requirements that offer them some sort of repeatability. So there seems like there's a lot of experimentation in that process. What can you share about how you focused in on that, if we can go one level deeper?
Yeah. Look, I mean, it's a great question. Look, see, from my perspective, there are a couple of different, moving parts here, right? So the first thing, you're right. Our buying center has not changed. We sell to the office of the CFO, and within the office of the CFO to the controllership. That's who we target.
Mm-hmm.
That being said, as we all know, and as has been said multiple times on this podcast, they're an incredibly risk-averse, conservative buying center. And so the reality is, unless the pain point is material enough
Mm.
for them to bring in a new approach, not necessarily a tool or not necessarily a product, but a new approach, which involves change management to their business processes, in addition to the tooling, the reality is that they are more than likely to just stand pat.
Mm-hmm.
And so for us, narrowing the aperture involved a couple of things. One is identifying the segment of the market from a firmographic filter standpoint where the pain was large enough.
Mm.
And the pain was large enough in terms of, hey, they have sufficient transactional volumes.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say they're processing, I'm making it up here, 5,000 invoices a month, or 50,000 invoices a month, or 250,000 invoices a year, right? If I were to just use that as a proxy for transactional volume. So the volume threshold is large enough where now I've got to apply a bunch of people to addressing that, number one. But then the other dimension of narrowing the aperture is I'm not going after every company in the world that meets that firmographic filter. I'm going to prove it out in a playground where the company has maybe just one specific type of, application system, an ERP system or what have you, rather than four of them, right? So what that does, frankly, is it narrowing that aperture forces a few things. Number one, it ensures that your sales team is not diluting its prospecting messages and outreach messages to try and essentially come up with, messaging that is sort of universal across everybody. We're being very, very intentional and deliberate to one type of install-based client, one. Second, it forces your product engineering and your services teams to get really deep and really good within that ecosystem. Over time, you can probably expand and have coverage across multiple, but narrowing the aperture forces everybody to be really good at that one thing. Now, of course, there is a trade-off here, which is you might make the wrong bet and you might basically narrow the aperture in a domain that eventually doesn't pan itself out. But hey, that's the nature, if you will, of the business that we're in. So for us, narrowing the aperture is from a firmographic standpoint is finding the right companies that have the pain threshold.
Mm-hmm.
And in our case, that is clearly defined by transactional volumes. And transactional volumes, I gave an example of one of those, which is invoices processed, or as an example. The second dimension of narrowing the aperture is not going in and fishing in multiple sort of application ERP ecosystems. Going really deep in one.
Yeah.
And that's been great. Once we've shown the success there, now you've earned the right to add the second, which we are doing now. And then by the end of this year, we might add a third. But it's that iterative way to expand as opposed to saying, hey, I'm gonna spread myself really thin and then try and be all things to all people. I don't think that works, especially not in this sort of a highly risk-averse conservative buying setup.
I'm curious, when you look back at your experience with Palerra and you're building that product and taking it to market, and you're seeing the competition and you're seeing the acquisition starting to happen, and there's a certain appetite and readiness for this, pain that your product is going to solve for is being developed. When you compare that to what you're seeing with Auditoria, I'm curious, what do the signals look like from the market that are expressing their pain, implementing your product, and then the reaction and feedback you get that perpetuates and moves you forward faster to leverage that momentum? Are there similarities between those two worlds? And more specifically, what are some of the specific outcomes that some of your customers are able to give you in terms of feedback and how you're really making that impact?
Yeah. Great question. Look, I mean, I'd say that there are some similarities, although the dynamics, the operational dynamics are, I think, dramatically different.
Mm-hmm.
In the Palerra world, we sold to the chief information security officer into IT in general. And there, I think the canvas which you operate in is a little bit broader.
Mm-hmm.
And so you have the ability, if you will, to experiment perhaps a little bit more. Whereas here, I would say that it is the aperture is much narrower, and the value quotient has to be very, very tight, and tied typically to a business process. What we've seen here is, at the end of the day, the benefits that a customer gleans from technology of the type that that Auditoria provides has to result in a value quotient that is sort of quantified in, let's say, 2 or 3 primary vectors. So the first one is the reduction of process workload, and thereby the efficiencies and productivity improvements for the team itself,
Mm-hmm.
right? For the finance team itself. If our software doesn't do that, we have fundamentally under-delivered.
Right.
So that is something that we benchmark a before and after state.
Cool. Okay.
The second is the ability to process an order of magnitude higher of transactional volumes that they would otherwise have to do manually, that the client would have to do manually, meaning with people. And so we can benchmark at times an increase in transaction processing of 250, 270, 350%. But here's the critical piece. We do that with that accuracy that they expect. The 95, 96, 97% accuracy that they expect. So fundamentally, where the human operator is brought in is for oversight,
yes,
and for exception handling,
yeah,
as opposed to, hey, I'm going to have to actually do the work itself. You see what I mean? So
mm-hmm.
that's the second dimension. And then there's a third dimension, which is really sort of centered around, financial value that the technology brings that can be calibrated in a few different ways. Headcount optimization, there's
Mm-hmm.
some of that.
Mm-hmm.
There is risk reduction
mm-hmm.
due to savings from, let's call it, invoice fraud, as an example.
Okay.
Right? If you look at in our industry, JP Morgan puts out a set of research every year. The 2023 research, the AFP research called out that, believe it or not, 14% of all invoices coming into a commercial enterprise are typically fraudulent. Think of that. If you're a company that is, let's say, doing $1 billion in spend, right? If you're a large enterprise, 14% of that is fraudulent. Right? If we can detect and deflect and mitigate even a fraction of that or a percentage of that, we're delivering real hard dollar value to the client. And so that's another dimension, right? So this third category is hard dollar, savings, manifested across a couple of these vectors, namely, resource optimizations, vendor risk reduction, vendor fraud reduction, what have you. So it's the combination of these three that really drive value. And if our technology cannot move the needle in one or more of these, categories, frankly, we're underperforming, right? And we'd be hard pressed to justify an effective renewal. So that's what we strive for. That's the promise. The technology is cool, all of that's great, but at the end of the day, if it doesn't move the needle in the business value as I've just called out, that that's not good enough, and that's what we strive for.
I'm so excited that you have gotten to this point, because I'm sure there were some moments over the last few years where you were questioning your sanity. And I know we're just in the sort of first inning. There's a lot of work ahead of you and the team. But yeah, congratulations on getting to this point, and for the growth and fundraising and all that's happened over the last year or so, especially. What can we talk about in terms of what you've learned from a culture perspective across the different organizations and companies that you founded, I'm curious to have you speak to the core values and sort of guiding principles of your leadership style and sort of the cultural attributes of your organization that are giving you an edge compared to if you didn't have the experience that you have before.
Yeah. No, great question. Look, I mean, at the end of the day, we are in a people business. You know that, Kraig, right? I mean, we're all in a people business. So, the challenge that we as leaders have at the end of the day is all about building the confidence and the trust of our colleagues, our employees, our team members, our investors, our customers, as we endeavor to deliver ongoing value to them. See, the reality is the technology that we're bringing to bear does have a significant element of change management.
Mm-hmm.
And if I look at it from an outside-in window, there is this potential fear of job displacement or changes to people's roles because of technology.
Yeah.
And overcoming that resistance to change requires that clear communication and having a culture that embraces innovation and that represents the technology as augmenting what they're doing and upskilling and upleveling people as opposed to replacing people. I mean, the example that I give is think about when the ATM machine first showed up. Right, the ATM machine showed up, and every bank teller is like, "Well, my job's gone. Everyone's just going to be using the ATM machine." That's not really sort of how things panned out. What has happened is that individual was essentially provided opportunities in other aspects of the institution itself, of the bank itself. Like they're providing, term deposits and insurance, and mortgage loans and other 15 other things.
Mm-hmm.
Same sort of thing. Think of the time, again, I'll date myself a little bit, when pay at the pump first showed up. There's probably a couple of states in the country where you still have the guy that shows up to fill your tank. But in most places, I still remember this furor that, holy crap, pay at the pump showing up, all these jobs are going to go away. I have a newspaper cutting picture. I think this is from the 1960s of how automation was going to completely decimate the workforce here in the United States. Here we are in 2024 talking about AI in much the same way. So in my mind, this is not about displacing folks. It is about basically up-leveling them and opening up new opportunities. What's going to happen? And that's going back to the pay to the pump thing. Well, that person was essentially now given the opportunity to become a tech for that, credit card swipe machine, right? That's the role that opened up. The ability to install them, service them, maintain them, things of that sort. And I anticipate something very similar that's going to take place from an adoption standpoint with our clients. It requires, this culture of innovation, the mindset of technology to augment and improve people's jobs and lives. If I look at it from the inside view, right, from inside out view, it's all about essentially, maintaining that open level of communication with your teams. The teams need to know where the company stands. What does it mean for them? They're making a commitment, right? They're making a bet on the company. And as part of that bet, they're making a decision to commit years of their life to this particular mission. So our objective is to help bring together these diverse perspectives and expertise to the table, foster a culture of experimentation, foster a culture of innovation, but do it whilst there is accountability of what they are working on, right? That accountability has to be there, meaning it's great to have the ability to experiment with amazing tech, but if it doesn't move the needle for the business, we're probably kidding ourselves. And so together we chart the course for our, the company's success. united by this, I almost call it this common vision, and ensuring that we've got this unwavering dedication to customers' success and customers generating the business value in the vectors that are outlined earlier. So that's the way I think about it.
What are some of the rhythms and rituals that you have instituted that are allowing you to stay connected and aligned at this stage of the business compared to maybe 3 years ago? There's definitely been some lessons learned, shifts with the people on the team. You talked about hiring a little bit early in different ways that you've since learned could have been prevented maybe. What sort of things work now that you're really proud of putting in place that keep everything flowing?
Yeah. The reality is we've got to, as we scale, we've got to have systems in place that help us take advantage of that scale. But you've got to combine that with still the line of communication where everybody, at least within those respective cohorts, are finely tuned and aligned with what's going on with each other. So examples of these that we have a daily stand-up today, every morning, on the sales side of the house, right? This is not an engineering stand-up where in the traditional sense. I'm talking about a sales stand-up where you have salesperson or pre-sales, solution consultants, you have SDRs. They come in and talk about what they have for the day, what they've got, what they learned from the prior day, anything meaningful, what have you.
Wow.
And it's a quick roundtable. The expectation is you should be able to be done in 20-25 minutes. If it's going over that, now it turns into a review. It's not a review. It's a stand-up. The stand-up is intended to highlight gaps, highlight learnings, quick hits, and getting the team to buy in on the sales side, because salespeople are typically not used to this notion of stand-ups.
Yeah.
Maybe some are, but most of them typically you associate that with engineering and product. Anyways, that's one. I'll talk about another couple of things that we've institutionalized, and that is twice a quarter we have. So this is every 6 weeks. We've set up these sessions where the product team. Session one is where a product team essentially aligns and basically provides the rest of the company an update on roadmap adjustments, roadmap changes, what's slipping, what's shipping, what's on track, what has changed, things of that sort. So that's like this, opportunity for everybody in the company to be fully, in the know of product prioritization decisions that are being made, that are changing, and then the rationale behind that. These are like 90-minute sessions, but a healthy opportunity for communication and dialogue. Similarly, we have a similar sort of session twice a quarter where our customer success team comes in and walks everybody in the company through to the state of implementation projects, right? So the idea there is, okay, we've sold a bunch of stuff. We've got a bunch of customers. Awesome. How is their implementation going? What are the challenges they've run into? What are the things that are working well? What are the things that essentially need improvement? So again, it's a similar sort of an approach, but it elevates and of course, we've got a lot of operational things that people look at on a day-to-day basis and monitoring and all of that sort of stuff. But these are a couple of things that we have set up in place, which I think are super useful, and I'm hopeful that your listeners hopefully can benefit perhaps by instrumenting some of this themselves in their companies.
Well, Rohit, I want to give you a shout out for something that you've done that's unique to any other client I've had. You've had I don't know if you call it a value or it's a personal quirk that you have where you really want to have everybody share in the winnings. You've enrolled me in a stake in the company by providing services to you beyond just cash, which it's super unique. Like, you want everybody that is surrounded with you to win. So you're meticulous about who you bring into the circle, and the people that are part of this inner circle, you structure things in a way where you make sure everybody gets to win. Is that something that's always been a thing? Or did you kind of pick that up along the way through seeing the opposite of that being done?
Yeah. No, look, number one, I appreciate you calling that out. It's something that I learned, from my in this one. I'll give complete credit to my parents just for instilling that value system. It is all about the sum of the parts, right? You can try everything, but nobody essentially, wins by trying to be a solo trooper. It's not going to happen. Like what you can achieve collectively is it far exceeds whatever you can do individually. There's another dimension to this, which I've got to give credit to a couple of the folks that I referenced earlier, Rod Tanzamore in specific. That is, incentives matter. So even though it may not be spoken explicitly or approached, tangibly, you got to recognize that incentives drive behavior. And if you can essentially set up a structure that allows for everybody to partake in the success, the hopeful success, as they say, right, a rising tide lifts all boats.
Mm-hmm.
Why not? Let everybody win. And that is, in my mind, I think the way to build a scalable and an efficient business, and hopefully a business which is a repeat business, right, where people want to come back and work with you again. And and yeah, that's held me in good stead, and it's something that one looks for in every aspect of our business, even with clients today. Right? We go into these legal negotiations and these protracted, redlining process. The objective, let's find the win for both sides, as opposed to have it completely one-sided or what have you. Yeah.
Well, it makes an impact because the people that I've helped you bring on the team, each in their own way that I've followed up with, have said this is a really unique experience to work with Rohit and the others on the team, Adina and so forth, where I could see building businesses with them. And I've never heard that before from other candidates I've placed. And so I, again, attribute that to something really unique and special that comes down to how you manage and how you lead your organization. So just find that incredibly inspiring. Can we talk about your thoughts on the next 12 to 18 months, just maybe for a minute or two, just to give our listeners an idea of kind of where you're headed and more importantly, how they can support you?
Yeah. No, look, I mean, the next couple of years, I anticipate are going to be super, exciting, super busy, super. We're gonna challenge ourselves by essentially getting to a level of scale and a level of distribution like we've never had before here in Auditoria. We'll publicly probably be able to talk about it here in a couple of months, but we have the benefit of essentially having a distribution agreement with a global organization, a multi-billion-dollar company that essentially is taking our product, if you will, to all corners of the world.
Wow.
What that means is that will, for lack of a better word, get our product in the hands of users that in many situations we may not have even spoken with. And what that means is we've also got to get them ready for delivering the quality of service that they're probably going to expect and anticipate, which is fantastic, right? We set up a relationship with KPMG by means of a minority investment and an alliance relationship with them late last year that we announced publicly, and that relationship is off to a fantastic start. I've got nothing but great things to say about how well our teams have collaborated together, and so the ability to partner with them and then scale outward as part of what that entails, I think is going to be fantastic for Auditoria. Is going to be a real game changer for us. We have the opportunity as we go into the second half of this year, as we, really sort of, drive additional hiring, drive additional talent infusion into various aspects of the business. We anticipate doing that here in the US. We anticipate doing that in India. And for those of you that are looking for an opportunity to be part of a cutting edge early stage startup, early to mid stage startup that essentially is innovating dramatically with technologies in AI that is impacting every company through its finance office, through the office of their CFO, you got to think about Auditoria and consider Auditoria as a potential place to essentially give your talents a real a real shakeout. I think you'll be well challenged, and I think you'll be very pleased with what you see. So we're super excited, right? It's exciting because we're on the precipice of, like I said, this incredible distribution and scale, combined with this ongoing challenge to ourselves, honestly, that we have to deliver value and quantifiable value. Because if we don't, then we're just, if you will, something that can be replaced or changed or what have you, which is never a good spot to be in. So that's what the next 12 to 24 months holds holds ahead of me, and I can't wait. I can't wait to see what the team achieves here over the next couple of years.
Let's have some fun with a little bit of a longer time horizon, just for fun. Whatever comes out here, obviously you're not going to be held to it, but I'm curious about what excites you most, or you're hoping for as you look out maybe on a 5-year horizon. We can't predict the future, but what's your sort of high level forecast for both the business and for you personally? Do you have anything that you can share there, just for fun?
Well, I mean, I think if I were to put the horizon out 5 years, I'd say that we would want to be. I would hope that we would be market leader, Magic Quadrant leader, for this particular domain. We've got some early recognition, by being an early pioneer and an early innovator and a Gartner cool vendor and such. But I'd like to, think that the category that we're in, which is, AI applications for finance, hopefully we are the leader. And in the top right quadrant, if I were to use that as the as a moniker for growth, and at the end of the day, customers seeing real value from the technology, which means we've built an incredible Rolodex of clients, well-known brands. We've converted both the early adopters and the ones that essentially are the fast followers.
Yes.
To essentially to converts of embracing the power of what AI could bring to their day to day. So that's from a professional standpoint. I'd like to think that, and this is an ambitious self-serving comment, but I'll say that I'd wanna have as close to 100% retention, if you will, of our teams, that they feel that that this is so compelling that they want to hit their own individual renew button, right, and essentially stay on with the journey and sign on for another couple of years. That would be fantastic. We've got some amazing talent, and we'd like them, like nothing more than for them to find Auditoria as the home for where they can essentially build a lifelong career. So that's that on the professional front. On the personal front, I think I'm looking forward to seeing my kids a little bit more often. Especially now that they're out of the house and, if you will, in college and all of that good stuff. Hopefully, the opportunity to sort of see them on a more regular basis, I think, presents itself. That'll be fun. The joy you get in those relationships, they're so important, right? And that to me is something that's under my control. So I'm pretty confident that I'll make that happen.
Tell me about what you believe the world needs to understand or embrace that will make the world a better place in the coming years.
Yeah, that's a very deep question. Look, I mean, and I'll answer that in the context of beyond just my company and what we're doing. I think I've said it earlier, right? That we are in this era of incredible innovation with AI, and so I anticipate that every aspect of our life will be touched by AI.
Mm-hmm.
It's not that much of a stretch to honestly make that statement. It's reasonable to assume at this point that over the next 3, 5, 7 years, everything that we know it as we know it will change with the power that AI brings. That being said, I would like to see a few changes we live in an incredibly polarized world. We live in a world where people are not able to sort of segregate disinformation from facts.
Yeah.
And I think AI, unfortunately, has the tendency or has the potential to polarize people even further with fakes and, fakes on video, fakes on audio, fakes on pictures, so on and so forth. What I'd like to see is, frankly, AI for good, and how, this change can essentially be manifested in a positive sense. Um, do I think that AI requires regulation and governance? Yes, at a certain level it does. But do I think that's got to be at the cost of curbing innovation? Absolutely not. So I do think that the potential is massive, but my concerns are also there, which is, the highly polarized environments that we live in, and not just political polarization. Polarization is there across everything. It's like, if you don't say something good about somebody, the automatic assumption is you think they're bad.
Right.
Like, hang on a second, isn't there a middle ground between the two extremes? And that's my hope for the next 5 years, which is the ability to use artificial intelligence for good, for improving lives, for you know um, you know you know the opportunity for AI in medicine,
Yeah.
and dramatically transforming people with who have debilitating conditions, life conditions. The potential is just incredible, right? The ability, the impact on space travel. You see some of this, and you can just envision, what's going to happen in 10 years. Missions to Mars, I think, are going to be a reality in our lifetime. I couldn't have said that 10 years earlier. And so there is that potential, like I said, for a lot of good, a lot of positive change to come up in our society. We just have to stay close and ensure that we are able to deliver on that.
So if you could go back and tell yourself one thing early in your career, what would you say?
Look, for me, it's one of these where it would be embrace the journey of entrepreneurship, and always have that insatiable thirst or curiosity, but never lose out on resilience whilst you're at it. In hindsight, this might be something that I would probably want to leave your listeners with as well, which is, success is not defined by the absence of challenges. But by the tenacity and the determination that people have to overcome them, that you have in yourself to overcome them. And so embracing that journey of entrepreneurship for me would have been something that I would have told myself a lot earlier.
If our listeners wanted to come and work for you, can you talk me through just a really unique way they could approach you to really blow you away and make you want to hire them on the spot?
The simplest way is drop me a note. It's Rohit at Auditoria.AI. Easy. Just reach out. Reach out. We'll get some time on the calendar, and when we chat, tell me what you know and what you've learned based on your homework, based on your research about what we do and what we do for customers, and how you can have impact there. That's what I'd say. I'm accessible, not that hard to find. Yeah.
All right. So to wrap this up, what are 2 to 3 non-obvious personal things about you that you're most passionate about outside of work, or any fun rituals or mindfulness practices that make life more meaningful for you?
Look, I mean, I think for me, you've got to. I mean, I've got to have things that I do that essentially um, allow me to maintain my balance. And now this is a 24/7 job, and so there's got to be things outside of work that that keep your sanity going. And so, from my vantage point, right, it's things like reading, it's things like listening to podcasts, believe it or not, experimenting with new tech. Um, I love the new Vision Pro. I don't know if I'm going to be using it. I'm going to be a power user of the Vision Pro, but it doesn't stop me from making a fool of myself by putting it on and whatever, doing those finger gestures and such, and trying to see if I can work with it and such. Why do I do that? Because I know that in 5 years, my end users, my buyers, that's what they're going to be using. So I might as well, I have that curiosity and just that desire to challenge myself, even though I might look like a bit of a fool, putting that device on and trying to figure out how I work with it. But my point is, you got to have that balance, and so find what gives you that balance. Find what gives you, um, the ability to recharge your batteries almost unknowingly. Surround yourself with a support network of mentors, of collaborators, of fellow entrepreneurs who can inspire you, who can challenge you, who can uplift you. And learning never stops, right? It doesn't matter whether you're a 15-year experienced person or a 5-year, somebody who's brand new or somebody who's like 30 years of experience. Mentorship and learning never stops. So surround yourself, find somebody that can play that role in your life. And then, dream big. You stay focused, execute, but dream big. Just don't lose sight of the impact that you can have in the world.
I'm curious, what are the one or two things that personally excite you about the future? You've talked a lot about many, many aspects of this already, but if we close out on the one or two things that really just get you pumped for where we're at as a society, as a human population.
It's the impact of human potential combined with the acceleration in technology.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this is, what is it? Unstoppable force meeting immovable object. Is that what it is? But it is one of these where these two forces are coming together, and the potential of what could be just has me so excited. I mean, we could spend another hour talking about tech things, non-AI and finance things that have me so pumped up, right? I think of what's happening in this world with the innovation in meds with GLP-1 drugs. I mean, can you imagine? Forget about the impact that they have on diabetes and weight management, but if they can control addiction, think about what it would do for folks that have gambling and alcohol and tobacco addictions. Right?
Oh my gosh.
Think about that. I mean, that is the potential for the human mind, and combine that with the technology that we are experiencing today and what we have ahead of us. I mean, just makes me incredibly excited and optimistic for the decade coming up.
I appreciate our partnership so much and your influence on my life and your infectious enthusiasm. It's such a pleasure to work with you and to know you and to have you on the show. And with that, we can wrap it up. Thanks so much for coming on the show.
Awesome. Thanks so much again for having me, Kraig. I'm excited to have the opportunity to spend a little bit of time with you and your listeners today. Looking forward to further opportunities of collaboration. Thanks again.
And that's a wrap on this episode of the Bear Hug Experience. Thank you so much for joining us. If you enjoyed what you heard today, please give us a like, click, follow, or subscribe. We appreciate you taking a moment to give us a quick rating and a written review so we can continue to expand our reach and inspire the next generation of leaders to help make this world a better place. You can also contribute to the conversation around this specific episode by using the comments section of whatever platform you're on. And last but not least, if you have direct feedback, a question, or a guest you'd like to suggest that we have on the show, please shoot us an email at podcast@bearhugrecruiting.com or visit bearhugrecruiting.com/podcast. Thanks so much for listening, and we look forward to having you join us again on another episode of the Bear Hug Experience.
Woah.